convene the regular Board of Education meeting. Please rise for the salute to the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Moving on to item C, roll call. Minty? Sorry.
Mr. Makowski?
Here.
Ms. Rinaldi?
Here.
Ms. Wilk?
Here.
Mr. Lambert?
Here.
Ms. Crotty? Mr. Vincenzi?
Here.
Ms. Rosa?
Here.
Mr. Gambardella?
Here.
Ms. Albino?
Here.
Mr. Dika?
Here.
We're all set.
Thank you, Mindy. Before I continue on with our meeting, I would like to say that I will be running the meeting tonight. Board Chairwoman Leslie Crotty is unavailable to come out tonight, and she apologizes, and Mr. Lambert was not supposed to be here originally.
And I apologize.
Thank you. Moving on to letter D, minutes. Board members received the minutes from the August 22nd, 2016 Board of Education meeting in their packet on Friday. Did everyone receive them and have enough time to review them? Yes. Are there any questions? Good. Okay. Seeing there are no questions, may I ask for the motion on the minutes?
Yes, Madam Chair, I move that the board approve of the minutes from the August 22nd, 2016 meeting of the Board of Education as presented.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. Moving on to letter E, report from the Student Council representative. Before we welcome our new Student Council representative, I would like to ask Dr. Carnamola to introduce him.
Thank you, Mrs. Wilk. Welcome, Ollie. We're happy to have you with us here tonight. This is the first meeting that he is attending with us as the student representative. And Mr. Dika is a senior this year, as our representatives usually are. He's enrolled in a number of advanced placement courses at the high school. And as I understand it, one course in particular he's looking forward to taking is his AP Computer Science Principles class, as he's planning on attending college in hopefully Connecticut in the next year to pursue a career in computer science. I know he spends some time outside of school playing soccer, that I was already privy to, being part of the Watertown High Link Crew program for the past few years, and he's also a member of the World Language Honor Society for Spanish. So we're proud of your achievements, and we're happy that you're here with us, and I understand it that you are ready to go tonight, correct?
Yes.
Okay, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Carnamola. It's an honor to be here tonight. At John Trammell Primary School, there was a successful opening with their first ever Popsicles on the Playground event, bringing in hundreds of families. For the first time ever, all students were provided the opportunity to meet their teachers before the start of the school year. At Polk Elementary School, the first PTO meeting took place on Thursday, September 8th at 7 p.m. in the library. They also had their first leadership team meeting. This team is charged with the task of continuing to implement PBIS, which stands for Positive Behavioral Interventions and Supports. At Judson Elementary School, the PTO held a back-to-school bash on Thursday, September 1st, 2016, which was a time for families to meet each other and enjoy some outdoor fun. Also, picture day for the students will be September 13th. At Swift Middle School, there was a number of events regarding September 11th. A September 11th Remembrance flag donated by a student 10 years ago was hung in the front lobby. Students in social studies classes completed a variety of activities to reinforce the learning of this significant event in American history. At Watertown High School, our Link Crew led a very successful orientation for the class of 2020 on Wednesday, September 31st. Senior meetings with counselors will be beginning this week, and our senior parent night will be Tuesday, September 20th at 5:30. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. We look forward to seeing you at our next meeting. Moving on to letter F, the superintendent recommendation and reports.
Thank you. Although it seems like school has been in session for a year already, it's really only been 2 weeks. It just goes by quickly at this time of year. But at our last board meeting, we actually had not fully convened yet. We hadn't had convocation and the return of all of our staff members and students. So just a couple of quick updates. We did have convocation, which I usually refer to as the opening ceremony for the start of school. We held it here at the high school. We had every faculty and staff member in the district here. It was a great opening day. We had our Swift band do a student performance. They did the national anthem and 2 other songs. Part of that was because our teacher of the year, as you all know, was Mrs. Borbis, music teacher, and partially in testament to her, that was the performance that was chosen this year. She also had a student speak on her behalf. to all of the faculty and staff. We had a few words from Mrs. Crotty, and also, again, the presence of Mr. Scannell, the town manager, which was great, as we talked a little bit about the coordination that's happened between the town and the school district. And so I'm very appreciative, particularly to Mr. Scannell for taking the time out of a busy schedule to spend the entirety of convocation with us. Also, we had, as I said, Mrs. Crotty, Mrs. Wilk, and Mr. Lambert with us. Thank you. We also met with, over the course of the last 2 weeks, Mr. Senecola, Mr. Jones, and the new athletic director, Mr. Catuccio, and I met with some members of the Gold Circle of Sports, and we are discussing the possibility of a donated press box from the Gold Circle, and what that, to replace the one that is here, as the one that's here at the high school was actually never meant to be a permanent press box. They have assembled some quotes from folks about putting it in. We're looking into making sure all the code issues we're in compliance with and so on, and we'll be having a facilities meeting about that when all the information is together. But we are, at this point, it looks like moving forward in a positive direction with being able to do that with the help of the Gold Circle. Of course, very grateful for that. We finally have, from the facility standpoint, all of our cogen units online. Here at the high school and at John Trumbull, which should help in reducing some of the electricity costs and also with some of the power needs. Our train system is installed at John Trumbull Primary School, which, as you know, was in this year's budget and was necessary to replace due to the age of the original one, and now we can ensure that we are always able to control the heating, ventilation, and air conditioning that exists at John Trumbull. Now we are in the process of training the individuals who will be needing to use it as we go along. We also, as I think you know, but just reiterate that the sidewalk work at John Trumbull has been completed with the help of the town. We actually were able to do more than we originally anticipated, which is great because, as you know, the John Trumbull is full of sidewalks, and a lot of them had been deteriorating, curbs and cracks and so forth, and that looks great. And again, really grateful to Public Works for coming out and helping us to do that, kept the costs down, and also they got it done very quickly. From the curriculum perspective, we have been working quite a bit, as you know, with Elise Archibald, our K-6 math specialist, to put in new curricula and interventions from the K-6 level. And since we have not budgeted for anyone to do the same in the 6 to 12 level, but obviously we are in need of it, and we'll certainly talk about that again more than just this evening, we have someone coming to work with us from Ed Advance, formerly known as Ed Connect. Ed Connection has changed its name. It is Ed Advance, our local service area based in Litchfield. And we have a math consultant coming from Ed Advance to work here in the same way with our 9 through 12 and backing down to the middle school. But as of now, Dr. Parlato and Ms. Archibald have met with that person to try to start planning for what would be done so that we can assure some vertical alignment between K and 12, even though we'll now be looking at 2 people to do that. We've also been, for the K-6 side, assembling quite a bit of materials out of the curriculum office for the mathematics program in grades K-6. And as you know, we put in a new program, we put in the investigations program in the lower grades, and there's continued work alongside of that to ensure the instructional strategies are moving with it, and whatever other materials they may need are, again, being aligned, and grade 3 teachers are using the same, grade 4 teachers using the same in both schools, so on. So it has been an incredibly busy 2 weeks, as much of what I just said happened in the last 2 weeks, not from the facility standpoint, but certainly from what we've been doing in the schools. I had office hours at the Watertown Library, the first for this year. I saw some of our community members there, including folks from the Garden Club, too, who want to continue the work that they already do with us and increase it a bit. We are talking with also the Watertown Library, the foundation, about bringing in another speaker, as we did last year with astronaut Rick Mastracchio, so more updates about that soon. Speaking with Paula Labonte about that. And we're really excited about the Transition Academy, having finally totally moved over to Seaman Company. And I've spoken with Pamela McGuire, the transition coordinator, who you remember came and presented to the board about our transition program. And we are going to try to hold the equivalent of a ribbon cutting for the new program and be able to show it to the board, to community members, bring in some prospective employers to increase the amount of possibilities for jobs for our transition 18 to 20-year-old, 21-year-old students also. So I'd like to publicly thank Mrs. McGuire for all the work that required to do that, Mrs. Swaby, the facilities department, who had a lot of work to do to make sure that we put together a campus off-site, really, and also Jeff Turner, who did all the technology needs, because of course we still need them to access our networks remotely and so on. So that is a snapshot of the last 2 weeks. Any questions for me about any of that or comments? Okay. So I have the pleasure this evening of being able to introduce Mr. Jones to do the NEASC presentation, or if we are set up. As you know, Mr. Jones, along with the entire faculty at Watertown High School, and of course with the oversight of Mrs. Lewis and Mrs. Kugler, who are here with Mr. Jones also, have done a tremendous amount of work to prepare for the NEASC visit, which is this November. Oh my goodness, what is wrong with me tonight? This October. I have too many things on the brain. And the report the draft is completed at this point. And Mr. Jones is here to take us through basically the timeline of events and the work that has been done to date so that we are all on the same page. This is not to say that this is everything. This is nowhere near everything that the committee will be receiving. This is an overview of the work that was done. Thank you, Mr. Jones.
Thank you, Dr. Carnamola and Board of Education members, for having me tonight to review the process that has really been over the past 2 to 4 years, primarily over the past 2 years with work by the entire staff of Watertown High School, with the support of Munson House and various other people that I'll touch on. Before I get started, I did ask that Ms. Kugler and Ms. Lewis attend tonight. They are our NEASC chairs. They've been the NEASC chairs throughout the process, which means they've been the NEASC chairs longer than I've been the principal here. And I just want to personally thank them for their hard work and dedication in even seeing a principal and an entire administration change and holding the fort and really doing a very, very fine job in leading this process for this school and for this district. So I just want to say thank you to both of you. The reaccreditation process, as we've discussed before, is an important process to be able to show any college who takes one of our students' transcripts that we are an accredited school, that we have the same rigor and the same levels of success and expectation of any high school in the New England area. And that is a very short way of explaining why accreditation is important. It is important that colleges across the country see us as a school that sets our standards and levels of rigor to that of any other high school in the New England area. So to that extent, every 10 years you have a reaccreditation visit. Our visit is a little bit after 10 years just due to the fact of having a new principal. They extended it out, so this has actually been about 12 years since they were last here. The process starts with looking at your core values and beliefs and goes from there. The process involves the entire staff and facilities managers and different people from the district level. That process looks at these 7 standards that are given by NEASC. If you'll just take a look at them, you can see that they go through kind of a litany of everything we do, down to making sure that our building is properly maintained facility-wise, to how we're giving assessments and how we're giving out students diplomas based on graduation requirements. Just an overview of the reaccreditation process to kind of talk a little bit more in depth about what I was just discussing. The faculty examined and looked through the core values of our school that were set, as I said, 11 to 12 years ago, and came up with an understanding and a better language to make those core values and those beliefs into 21st century type language. We presented this to the board already. and what those core values and vision statement look like. That also includes updating academic expectations and the graduation requirements and performance standards that we discussed with the Board of Education last January and February. So the next part is to complete the self-study. That process takes roughly about a year and a half to 2 years. And when it says self-study, it is a self-study. It's kind of like reviewing it ourselves, reviewing our school as ourself, and coming up with an understanding of what we think we are as a school with those 7 different standards that I've already shown you. Our staff broke into committees that were chosen actually before I got here, mostly by both of our chairs and our former administration, and they chose that staff based on breaking the standards up and making sure that someone was represented on each of the standards from every department and area of the school. So in other words, one standard didn't have all the English teachers on it, and one standard have all the math. Everybody was split up so that there was an even voice among special education, guidance, our career and technical education, and making sure that every standard had someone represented there that was able to speak to the needs of that department. Over the course of that 4 to 5 year period, as we had people who potentially left or retired or whatever, we tried to make sure we were replacing experienced people who understood our school on every single committee. So those would be the only changes on those standards throughout the process. Those committees were created 2 years ago, at the end of the school year, 3 years ago now, but 2 years ago we began the process. Those committees got together and began to evaluate our school. We also conducted the Endicott survey. That survey went home to parents, to students, and to staff. That survey looks at a litany of things that we do as a school and gives you a gauge of where we're at from all 3 of those various opinions and really viewpoints. Combined with the Endicott survey, as well as documents that were provided by our staff, we were able to go through the self-study by answering questions that NEAS proposes. If you look at the information that I provided you, you'll see the executive summaries that were given. In that, those are what the team is trying to create to be able to write their actual report. So the timeline of events. Those of you who have the PowerPoint in front of you know that the next few slides are timeline of events. And I tried to include all of the meetings that we've had so that you can see the amount of time that the Watertown High School staff has spent while doing this. In order to kind of put that into context, that's still while doing everything else. So that's still maintaining, adding district initiatives like our learning targets that has been a great addition to our school, but still maintaining the time to do this during professional development times. That's looking at grading, lesson planning, all the things that teachers do that's taken for granted so much, that takes up so much time, was still occurring while this was going on. And I just want to point that out to give the staff at Watertown High School a lot of credit in the dedication that they showed to go through this process. We began, as I said, and I've already described a lot of what occurred in 2014-15 by really going through and analyzing where we were as a school. Once we came into the second semester of 2014-15, we began actually looking at writing the summaries. Just so you know, what's reported to NEAS is a full narrative and an executive summary. So the narrative is many pages long. It has multiple questions per standard that you're expected to answer, such as the counseling department has the resources and tools to meet the student's needs. So what that standard would do is take that question and they would look at the data, look at what has been provided by the counseling department, look at the survey results from the students at the Endicott survey, and they would decide whether or not it looks like we have the resources in our counseling department to meet the needs of students to prepare for a post-secondary education. They answer that, and they answer it in a narrative form. Then they move on to the next question. That's for each of the standards. Some standards have 10 questions, some have upwards of almost 20 questions that they have to answer for each of those standards, each of those 7 standards. So that's what the committee is doing. They're looking at the information provided, and they're creating a self-study. They're looking at what we do as a school and trying to put it into words. When you look at the first semester of 2015-16, this is when we invited in parents, we invited in Board of Education members and students to do roundtable discussions with each of the standards. So at this point, they've had a good idea. They've kind of been able to start writing. They've started looking at the narratives and started looking at what we do and really putting it into words. And now they've begun to make sure they're getting everybody else's opinion. We were very fortunate to have Board of Education Chair Ms. Crotty here as a Board of Education representative. We had many parents here. We had many students actually were here for a panel as well. And they participated and answered questions that the committees, the standard committees, maybe hadn't seen in the self-study that they had done, or things that they still had answers for. The idea for the self-study is not to pat ourselves on the back. The idea for the self-study is to be honest about who we are as a school, and to look and be very reflective about what we've done, and then be proactive and trying to set some goals and some things that we can do to improve as a school. The idea is not that we're perfect. The idea is that we aim to be the best we can for our students and for our community. Throughout the first semester, the narratives, the full narratives were completed, and then the committees were tasked with creating an executive summary. Dr. Carnamola, did the Board of Ed receive the executive summaries? Okay, I just didn't see them in front of them. So the executive summaries were the one-page document for each of the standards. Those executive summaries were then created based on the full narrative. So the committee then had to take the long narrative that were in some cases many pages and break it down to an executive summary where they had to come up with a rating of our school based on the scale that NEAS gives. They create that, and then they create the strengths and needs for each of the standards. So that document is then voted upon by the staff. So all of those executive summaries, so you don't vote on the full narratives because that can get a little timely because of wordsmithing and everything else. You vote on the executive summaries. All of our executive summaries were approved. We did vote on them and meet with the entire staff and go through them. We voted electronically, and all of that information is ready for the NEAS reaccreditation visit when they attend. From that, the school leadership team takes that information and creates the school-wide kind of goal, the plan, the 2-year and the 5-year plan. One thing that we thought was very important, we attended a visit, NEAS seminar back last spring, myself and both of the 2 chairs, and one thing we were very happy was that we felt like we were ahead of the game more than some schools, so I am very happy about that. But the other thing that we asked was the process for creating that 2-year and 5-year plan. We were told that basically, in a lot of schools, the principal takes the executive summaries and puts it all together and creates a plan. We wanted to do things a little different. The 3 of us met, and we took up an entire whiteboard, and we wrote down, based on all of the executive summaries, we wrote down what we saw as important, what stood out to us, what didn't stand out to us, which is sometimes the best way to write a goal. And then we brought that to the leadership team. We discussed it as a leadership team, and then the 2-year and 5-year plan was created with that buy-in from the school leadership team here at Watertown High School. So it's just, again, speaks to, I think, the true desire for this to be a staff-led process.
Mr. Jones, if I may, through the chair, can you just clarify for the board who the leadership team is? And I don't necessarily mean names, I mean.
Yep, that's our department chairs. Those are the department leaders of our school. In some cases, we do have some people who do not receive stipended department chair stipends, but they still attend those meetings as their departments. They want to be represented on the leadership of our school. That committee meets once a month and is the committee that really makes a lot of the leadership decisions for the school, including looking at instructional guidance and how to be instructional leaders in the school.
Thank you.
So the last part, that's what the school did, community involvement. We are thankful to have the Town Times, who has published the information that we had to have published to let the public know that we would be starting this self-study, to let the public know about the Endicott survey, and to let the public know about the actual reaccreditation visit. The reaccreditation visit, October 2nd through 5th, so coming up pretty quickly here, is a very inclusive visit. It involves them coming in and really just looking at everything we do for 4 days. The visit is supposed to be non-stressful, but for everybody, obviously, we want to look good and we want to show our school well. The purpose of the visit is for them to take the full summaries, the narratives, the full narratives, the executive summaries, look at all the documentation that we have, and see if they agree or disagree, and come up with a report for our school that, one, determines our reaccreditation, but more importantly, they help create create a plan for 2 years and 5 years to show growth and to make sure that we're doing what we need to be doing to continue to grow along that. That plan does not always involve just instructional practices. It could be that your computer lab is not cool enough and computers are overheating every single day, and you need to do something about that right now. For the record, I use that because all of our computer labs are quite cool and running fine, but that could be, it can be a facilities thing. It can be a lot of different things that are involved in that. One thing, for example, our school-wide rubrics. We did create new rubrics, but we didn't want to force a new structure on our staff, so we are still piloting our new school-wide rubrics as graduation standards, and I mentioned that again when I presented last February. And to that extent, we know that they're going to say that we need that process and that it's not in place. We know that that will be in our 2-year recommendations from NEASC. We're expecting that. We're already putting things into place to plan for that, but it was either force a structure that's not autonomous and that's not really homegrown, or allow our staff to really work through these rubrics and make sure that they are what's best for our students. We're always going to choose the latter. So to that point, when they come in, they will come on a Sunday. The chair has been named. She is, everyone who comes to the reaccreditation visit, just so you know, they're educators in New England. So they're administrators, they're teachers, they take time out of their schedules to come. So she's an administrator in another district. She has just started her school year. So her and I have been emailing back and forth. She is actually coming this week to do what's called a pre-visit. That's normally done about 3 to 4 weeks out from the visit. She and I were trying to coordinate times to make sure that we could get that going. We're doing that this week. She sets the schedule. So the chair from NEASC sets the actual schedule of when this panel meets, when this group meets. We don't set that schedule. We have kind of a mock schedule. I've done a visit. Both of our chairs have done a visit. Mr. Holgrefe has done a visit, and Dr. Carnamola has done a visit in the past as well, where we all kind of know the process, so I can guess what it is, but she sets the actual times. We will have that hopefully by Friday. They will be staying in Crown Plaza right down the road, so they won't be far. And the process basically looks like them coming in and talking to this group and observing this class and interviewing this teacher and talking with this group and doing a lot of information like that. They do spend a lot of the afternoons at the hotel writing. I can tell you that when I went on one of these visits, it was me and an assistant superintendent doing one of the narratives, and I was up till 12:30, 1 o'clock easily writing the things. So they spend a lot of time working and really trying to analyze our school in a very short snapshot of what we do. And so it's hard work. It really is. For the Board of Education, I did ask, because I knew I was presenting, the general times that you would be needed, and she doesn't have the exact specifics, would be between 3 to 5 on Sunday, October 2nd. That would include both the reception and the Board of Ed panel. So there's two things that the Board of Education really play a vital role in. One is the welcoming reception. So when the committee gets here on Sunday, we'll speak to them in the library, we do some interviews, and then we do a welcoming reception where we'll have hors d'oeuvres, we'll thank them, greet them, they'll get to see our community and what we do. And that's a time that we really want and appreciate the support of our Board of Education. And then following that would be the Board of Education panel, where some of the group, it won't be the whole group, but some of the group will be meeting with the Board of Education to ask questions, and they have prescribed questions from NEASC, ask questions of the report and the district and things like that. They're not going to ask specific questions of, on line 2 of this report, it says they know that the Board of Education didn't create the reports. They're going to be asking more general questions about where the district's headed, how you feel the district's doing right now in its current place, how you feel the vision of the district is doing, and how you feel the vision of the Board of Education meets what we say is our core value statements. Okay? After that, on the next 3 days, those same kind of panels continue. They meet with department chairs, they meet with myself, they meet with both of our NEASC chairs, they meet with each of the standards. Those visits continue throughout those 3 days. And so if I look tired by that Wednesday, October 5th, it's because I will be. But it will be a great experience, and we're looking forward to that. It's been a lot of work over the process of more than 2 years, but definitely the past 2 years, to really try to capture who we are as Watertown and who we want to be as Watertown graduates. So at that point, I think I'm done and have spoken enough. So if you have any questions for me.
So does anybody have any questions for Mr. Jones? Go ahead, Jim.
I'm very impressed with all the work you did, and I really can't tell you how much I appreciate all the work that the faculty has done and that you've done. I really understand it because I coordinated 2 self-studies, and I was on 2 visiting committees, but I just want to ask you a couple of things because...
Excuse me.
Could you just move your mic forward a little bit?
Okay, can you hear me now? All right. A couple things that I was concerned about was if they do ask us questions, should we have the whole self-study? Because I've seen situations where they expected everybody involved to be familiar with the entire self-study and read the self-study.
I can ask our chair on Friday just to verify. I was advised to give the executive summaries. That's what I gave, and advised that any of the information you would need would be involved in that executive summary. So, again, as I said before, I was advised they're not going to ask you a lot of questions specific to this. The questions are going to come from this in the sense that they're going to look at it and I have a question about this, but your answer would come from your own experiences as a Board of Education member. But I will clarify that and make sure I ask that.
Okay, and the other thing I noticed on a visiting committee that we were on in Danbury, there was an issue with this, where the action plan wasn't really clear. And I'm seeing that you have a lot of needs, which is good, because I know that they want to see that you really looked into the school a lot, and you found that there were weaknesses that you have to act on. But I'm just wondering if you had action plans on any of these, because I think that, and how you're going to correct the situation, because I think they're going to want to see that.
The 2-year and 5-year plan was sent out as well.
Okay.
It's broken down so that it aligns with our district vision and our district goals. So it's broken into 4 different things. It's actually a very broad action plan, but those things speak specifically to the needs. So when I spoke about what we wrote on the whiteboard, we took directly from these executive summaries, we took the strengths and needs, and we wrote up every need on that board. And then I drew with a lot of different colors, lines, to try to connect the needs so we didn't have a 30-page 2- and 5-year plan, and then tried to break those down into the language that you see here and try to arrange them by our district goals so that we're aligning ourselves with the larger district as a whole. But that's where the action steps come from.
Yeah.
The plan itself would be developed through choosing, okay, we're going to make sure we're looking at this. For example, the school-wide rubrics, that plan has been very specific, and we're setting this up, and setting this up. So each plan could be a page in and of itself of trying to make sure, and those are different things we've already begun to take on and things that we will continue to.
No matter what you do, you know they're going to find criticism, and he's going to make recommendations. So just it's always the toughest thing to have to deal with, because you never expect usually they hit you with things that you didn't really know that they were going to hit you with. They're always looking at different angles and different things that you miss. So.
Yeah, and I will say that while I do think we've put together a good report, I look forward to an outside group being able to look at what we do as a school. And while I'm sure there will be some things that we say, well, I think we already are moving in that direction, I look forward to receiving some feedback and seeing ways that we can continue to grow. There are definitely things that we noticed in this self-study and things that we already knew but now are on paper that we know we need to improve on in order to give the best for our students here at Watertown High School and the larger Watertown community. So while I appreciate the recognition to the staff as well.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Any questions for Mr. Jones?
Can I?
Mr. Knapp?
Mr. Jones, these 7 NEAS standards, do we have a way of getting the explanation of the actual standard?
I can provide
Or
that
is
for you.
that's quite involved, quite lengthy?
Yes.
Okay, I don't have to have that. I was just wondering where those standards are very, very long and very,
Very
tough to
detailed.
understand.
Yep.
Um,
But I can provide that for you so
Yeah.
that you can see them. It's one of the things that we presented on a long time ago, were the actual standards and breaking them down. And I can provide that again for you. It's not hard at all.
On Executive Summary Standard 3, on the needs section, the student assessment data from a variety of sources such as sending, receiving, and post-secondary schools is not regularly gathered, analyzed, or communicated within or outside the school. Is that a issue with computers or an issue with gathering
Just-
the information from other outside computers to us? How would we improve that?
So just to clarify, that's standard 4, the executive summary standard 4. Just if anybody else is looking at it there. That's you're talking about the second bullet on standard 4?
Excuse me, it is understandable.
Okay. No worries. I know these standards well enough to know that if it says assessment, it's standard 4. So not a problem. So these are both systemic things that we need to do to improve, as well as kind of the day-to-day things that we need to do better from a communication perspective. Student assessment data from a variety of sources, just to read it again, such as sending, receiving, and post-secondary schools, is not regularly gathered, analyzed, or communicated within or outside of the school. We do have to improve our systems as a counseling department, and both as a counseling department and outside of our counseling department with our regular teachers, general education teachers, to make sure that we're tracking where students are going, tracking their success even as they go there, and also tracking their ability to get there based on the SATs, ACTs, and things that we've done here to prepare them for the post-secondary world that they're going in. That's a systemic thing where we need to have better structures to be able to look up a student and say, this is one thing we're doing here. One area that I know hopefully will help with that is Power School and making sure that we're able to use that data to help move us forward. The other side of it is just communication. We need to make sure that our students feel comfortable talking to us and make sure that we have a counseling department and teachers who they feel comfortable talking about their futures for, futures with, and talking through issues and concerns that they may have. Those are things that we regularly work on, but they're also things that we can provide professional development for to help better educate staff on preparing students for the future.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to add in, I think having SSP for students is another way that the high school is working to improve that, if you want to speak to that.
Yeah, our advisory program through the SSP program has already assisted with that, and I think it will continue to help. Even you look specifically at the senior capstone project and how that's gone from being something where there might have been a little bit resentment to now we have students who genuinely are excited about doing some projects and excited about the opportunity to do projects. We also have a community who is regularly reaching out to us saying, hey, I hear you have a senior capstone project. Maybe they could do this, maybe they could do that. And that's one area that really has helped to bridge that gap for students to understand the importance of preparing for that post-secondary life, if you will, and all the things that come with it.
One other one I have is the Standard 5 on the needs. While roles are clearly defined, the school board superintendent and principal are occasionally collaborative, reflective, and constructive in achieving the school's 21st century learning expectations. How could we as a school board improve that?
Just reading it. Hold on one second. I think that the expectation, or what the staff put here, was wanting to see the roles that are there be more effective in leading students forward for the 21st century. I think we've already begun that in a large way. When you look at, I'll use the example of the Transition Academy and the role that the Board of Education took in really helping to make sure that program is successful, and really taking that role as a leader in the community to really speak to it. I also think the role that this Board of Education has taken in helping us with making sure that we have a sound budget and making sure that that budget is worked through is a step in that direction. I think those are things that really come out and come to light when I hear that. Do remember, please, that some of the language in here, and this is something that we have to remind them when they actually visit, was, as I said, written 1 to 2 years ago. So it's possible that some of these things have already begun to really change and shift and grow. And I think this is one area that has shifted and grown and improved, and will only continue to grow and improve. That's something that I can express when I went to the NEAS visit. They talked about a continual change in administration, a continual change in principal. However, when I got there, the principal had been there for 4 or 5 years. That's not exactly changing every year. The report had been written 2 years earlier and just had kind of gone through that one sentence had been written 2 years earlier. So I think some of the language you'll see there has already been really improved upon and will continue to be improved upon. But those are 2 examples that I think the Board of Ed is already worked on, and I think the relationship between Dr. Carnamola and the Board of Ed will help grow and improve that even more.
I know through the years, I've been on this board for a while, and I don't know how you guys do it with the change in administration in this district that we've had in the past, 10 years, 10, 11 years, since NEAS started coming in a while back. Got to be tough to keep gathering that and then losing it and then gathering it back. It couldn't have been easy.
It's a credit I give to our staff.
Yeah.
It's a credit I give to them and the hard work they did to put together really a very comprehensive report on our school. You're correct. When I go back through the NEAS documents of the past 10 years, which is part of this process, I'm looking to see, did we follow through with what we said we were going to do 12 years ago now, 11 to 12 years ago. The different amounts of principals or assistant principals that I see on letterheads is very telling. But I think that where we are as a district right now is in a very good place that speaks to not only this, but some of the other areas. I think that, when you look at that statement, while roles are clearly defined, I don't know that that's always been necessarily the case in looking at some of the documentation, and I think that's already a step towards really showing that we're growing and that we're improving as a district and in the roles and responsibilities of everyone from the district. But I do thank you for this.
I know you have a question, Mrs. Raleigh. Can I speak to the question Mr. Lambert just asked? Because I think to give a specific example might have been what you were looking at how we might address that need. And so to your point and to Mr. Lambert's question, just one example I would think of for the superintendent, the board, and the high school collaborating in this way would be, for example, the program of studies. So you remember that in the last 2 years, and we spent even more time on it this year, we had curriculum instruction meeting to go through the program of studies, talk about what is expected of 21st century learners so that we were all on the same page, decide what courses needed to be added, and so on. That's a specific example of how we would all collaborate toward 21st century expectations for students.
Yep.
I just have 2 quick questions. One, I just want to say too about all the work that went into this and what you said about your team and the staff, because on top of everything else that you do, have to do that, I know. So 2 things. One, so after they come for their time, then what? When do they get back to you? How long is that process?
We don't talk about NEAS for about 6 months at least. The process takes about half a year for them to finalize the document and to work through it. It does take a little bit of time. That's one reason that NEAS is moving to all electronic documents so that they can better and more quickly go through everything and try to make that timeline a little bit shorter. When I did my visit, it was roughly about 4 to 6 months before I received the full report back. Every member of the team does receive it as a document that they participated in, but it'll be roughly 4 to 6 months. They say 6, but I think mine was closer to 4. But it does take a little bit of time for them to go back. Again, remember that the chair is somebody who is working in a school, so she has to do that and figure out the times to do that and work through it. It then goes to NEASC, and they do any final editing, minor editing, and things like that before it's actually sent back.
Okay. Then I just have one other quick question. On number 5, on standard 5, on the needs for, it says the parents at Watertown High School are not involved in meaningful and defined roles in decision-making, responsibility, and ownership. What do you think we could do there?
A lot. I think it's something that we really need to, it's one of the things that I'm going to be talking to the PTO about, and I'm looking forward to everyone who comes out to the PTO next Tuesday on the 20th at 6:45 in our auditorium. It's / commercial. It's an area that we need to improve on. Our Endicott survey had a large amount of students participate, had a very large amount of staff participate, almost 100% of our staff participate, and a very small percentage of parents participate. We set up computers at various parent nights, and what we really have seen through this process is we have a core group of parents who are phenomenal and do a great job of supporting this school, and we need to find a way to branch that out to a larger amount of parents who can give us a bigger voice, can honestly give those parents a rest every now and then, but we have a core group, have been phenomenal. When you look at our project graduation, that's a parent-led event. When you look at the events that we do as a high school, those are parent-led events. So we definitely have some parents who are very dedicated, but the biggest thing we saw was the amount is very small. Outside of that core group, we need to do a better job of helping that. To find that solution, I can't answer that right now. It really, again, just like this process needed to be authentic to what the teachers saw and what the teachers developed, that process of involving the community really needs to be authentic. I think parents have enough going on for us to not just create something out of the blue. I think we really need to involve the community and our specific Watertown High School parents in figuring out ways that we can reach them, figuring out ways that we can better communicate what we do at this school, and better communicate things that they can help us figure out, such as the previous question about post-secondary data. How do parents receive that data? How do parents know their kids are ready for college? And those are things that when I've talked to parents at games or things like that, I know they want to do, and we've got to find a better way of reaching them. I don't have an answer for how right now, but it's something that we have to do a better job of.
Well, I just want to say to you that I think you've done a good job of reaching out to parents, because I know at this stage in high school, it is hard for parents to get around to a lot of things because they're involved in other activities as well with their children. But your emails and your tweets and all that, I mean, you do communicate with the parents, so I don't think it's that parents don't know what's going on. And I think that might be a reason why they don't need to come out so much too, is because they do know what's going on. But it is hard. They have other children and they are involved, so I don't think that's so much something that you're lacking or that our school is lacking in doing. It's just the way it kind of is too sometimes at this age.
I would agree, and I appreciate that. I think that the goal is always to make sure that it's dialogue, and that we're receiving back information from them about ways. So we were always trying to do a better job, and this is one area that I'd like to see us do a better job in branching out and getting more parents involved, and also making sure that it is a dialogue, that they're engaging back with us, even with the parent nights that we do, and trying to really build upon those. We've added, I think in my time, many different parent nights, and trying to make sure that we have a lot of parents actually in attendance for those.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I believe Mr. Lambert has a question as well.
That's just one other one I have, Standard 7. There's an inconsistent plan in place that ensures that there is efficient maintenance in place to service the school plant. And to properly maintain and replace equipment is necessary. The district and school has never had a long-range formal plan that addresses programs and services, enrollment changes and staffing needs, facility maintenance, technology, and capital improvements. I would love to see how you address that.
Can you tell me where you're reading from?
Standard 7, there's no page numbers.
The last bullet. The last bullet, under needs.
Oh, under needs. Gotcha. So again, this process requires working with a lot of entities, both at the district level and at the school level. This was something where the teachers struggled through the process to find that long-term plan for facilities. I believe that Mr. Sinicola has since created that long-term plan.
Yes, he has.
So that would be something that, again, while this was a need and it was something that we needed to see, it's something that we can show we've already been able to create this. And I believe that he has already been able to create that and
My
provided that for us.
curiosity is whether that long-range capital improvement plan meets the standard? Because as facilities chairman, I really would like to know where we're headed there.
Yeah. I think that it would be worth looking at to make sure. I do know that he had that standard as one of the things to look at, but I think it would be interesting to look at, and I would gladly,
Possibly ways we can improve that
Yeah.
and alter it and meet the standard, because it would be interested to see what NEASC would like,
Yep.
other than what we have had.
And that's one of the things we'll look at with the report that we get back to see what they say. But one benefit is that Mr. Sinicola comes and actually does, for the two people who write that report on the team, he actually does a full facilities tour with them, where he'll look at the cogen units. He'll look at a lot of the stuff that we've already begun the process of doing, and making sure that we're moving in the right direction still to have better facilities and better plans for our facilities as they grow.
Because, there are things on that plan that may require outside sources of funding besides the budget, so it does take time to get that stuff together, so.
Yep. That's not again, that's an area where when this was written, we did not have that long-term plan that Mr. Sinicola has now. So that's something that would be provided to the team when they come. But remember what I said, we had to vote on these as a staff, so I can't change them now. It actually speaks very well of our district that we were already receptive to the needs and went ahead and put things into place that were already needed.
Thank you.
Do board members have any more questions? Yes.
Hi. The one thing I'd like to, well, I want to say first, thank you. When I worked in the insurance industry, I had to participate as a team leader in something very similar to this, and I know what kind of work goes into it, many, many hours, so thank you to all the staff. On Executive Summary 7, I wanted to just ask a quick question on the needs, the very first bullet. The school needs to further develop productive parent, community, business, and higher education partnerships that support student learning. Can you just give me a little bit information of where you are on that one right now, please?
Yeah, the key to that would really be the word further develop. We've already begun a lot of these things, but further developing. When I look at the last one, higher education partnerships, we have a partnership already with a couple of different schools. We are looking at a partnership, a deeper partnership with Naugatuck Valley that would allow our students to take more classes there. We also just began our CNA program that really truly is a partnership with Naugatuck Valley that also can directly help our students prepare for that kind of stuff. The other area with higher education that I want to point out, we have worked extensively with our CTE, our Career and Technical Education classes, in trying to make sure our staff is effectively trained, not only the equipment that we have, but also trained to prepare our students to go out into any post-secondary thing. So while it says higher education, it also says community and business, and we want to make sure our students are prepared for anything. So whether they're going to Harvard, or whether they're going to be working in manufacturing, or whether they're going to be a teacher, or whether they're going to be working here, or whether they're going to be working there, we want to make sure that whatever those goals are, that we're meeting those. You'll see a kind of a connection with that and with the question that Mr. Lambert had about right now we don't have great data to show that we are preparing them, and we want to make sure that we're repairing or improving the structures to make sure that, yes, we can say we are preparing those students, we know where they're going, and that we have those partnerships with those corporations and businesses. When you look at another partnership that we have, it's the Watertown, when you look at the Transition Academy, that's a partnership with many businesses here in town. So it's something that where it says further develop is very important there. We already have developed it, but we need to further develop that and build on those partnerships with different community organizations. When you look at the parent community part, that goes back to what I was talking about with Ms. Rinaldi, and just further developing those partnerships with parents, and making sure, again, that it's a dialogue and that they really have a voice in our school. I think I hit all of those. But just continuing to build that partnership, having really a brand. It's something that I've said a lot in our leadership meetings this year, and it's something that in now starting my third year here, I really feel we need. We need to have a brand. We need people to know what Watertown's high school is about. Our students need to feel proud to have that on their shirt. And when people see them in the community, they need to know that these are the best citizens that Watertown has to offer. And we really want to make sure we have that, and that's really what speaks to that. Those are a few things we've done. They'll continue. These are things that, as a high school, you should always be doing, but we will continue to grow those things as well.
Thank you.
Are there any other board members that have questions for Mr. Jones? Okay. I would like to thank you, Mr. Jones, you, your team, team, your staff, for all the time and hard work you put into this. It was greatly, greatly appreciated.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Thank you, Mrs. Kugler, Mrs. Lewis.
Thank you. Moving on to item H, public participation. Are there any members of the public that wish to address the board this evening?
Is there someone taking minutes?
Yes. Please just state your name and address, please.
Sure. My name is Valerie English Cooper. I live in Washington. I'm with Mental Health Connecticut, based out of West Hartford. It's a service, advocacy, education, nonprofit organization. Actually, one of the oldest, if not the oldest, in Connecticut. I'm here because my company is the recipient of a major federal grant to blanket Litchfield County with mental health first aid training. Why? First of all, some statistics in Connecticut specifically. Since 2013, you may know that opioid overdose has doubled just since 2013. There are certainly other substance use disorder problems within our communities. In Connecticut, the leading cause of hospitalization among people aged 5 to 45 is mental health disorders. And as recently as 2012, and prior to that, it was respiratory infection. The median delay from onset of symptoms to getting professional care is 10 years. And if you can imagine if somebody had diabetes, asthma, cancer, and waited 10 years, there are a myriad of reasons for that very disturbing statistic. But the biggest problem is that professional help cannot always be present and in the place where symptoms arise. And early intervention supports early recovery, and it just happens September to be National Recovery Month. So this month, we've analyzed the first 200 people in Litchfield County that we've trained just since April. And we've found, consistent with national statistics on mental health first aid training, it is in fact evidence-based right here in Litchfield County. People who take the training feel more confident reaching out to somebody who has developing signs and symptoms or someone who might be in a mental health crisis. And these are all lay community people. They feel more confident. They feel better able to recognize those signs and symptoms. They know where their community resources are so that they can help bridge to care. And a surprising fourth result of this training is that people that take the training actually have a better sense of their own mental wellness, just from what they learn. So I'm here also to say that our first training in Watertown will actually be next week. And what we've found in several communities throughout Litchfield County is because the school parental scaffolding pulls away when students graduate, that period tends to be one of the most vulnerable period for the onset of mental health problems. So we've recommended that parents of graduating seniors take mental health first aid. And we're working at the state level to try to get the commissioner to recommend it systemically so that parents of graduating seniors are prepared to recognize as their students, as their children move on from the cocoon of school and the support of home on to greater independence in the world, they're better able to recognize what might be going on. We're also training all the state police. We've trained a lot of town leadership. We've trained librarians. We've trained people from all walks of life. Because in fact, there isn't really anyone who isn't touched by mental health problems, be it their own personal experience, loved ones, colleagues, children. So I do want to say that we have the training next week. It's actually hosted by Connecticut Dance Theater. They have the space. Instead of dancing, people will be learning how to support people with mental health struggles. So I have the notice here that I can send out to you. We have a link to registration. And in the future, I'll talk more individually about how we can create more trainings here in Watertown, because I am community educated. educator in Litchfield County. I am the instructor, and there's no limit to the number of trainings that we can have during the course of this grant, which is the next few years. It's a SAMHSA grant, by the way, and has been supported. It's not a DEMIS state level, it's a federal level grant. And every single year since 2012, the grant has had greater and greater support in Congress, bipartisan support. So thank you very much.
Thank
for
you.
your time. Anybody have any questions?
The chair, or temporary chair? I would like to find out from you, is this something that would be offered at lower level,
Yes.
for the parents at lower level elementary students?
Actually, any parent can attend a training. There is a specific youth, the training that we offer is the foundational program. There is a youth mental health first aid training as well that exists, that tries to distinguish between developmental issues and possible developing mental health problem. And also looks at some diagnoses that really have an onset at much earlier childhood, for example, ADHD and oppositional defiant disorder, those kinds of things, as opposed to the foundational program looks much more deeply into depression and anxiety and some of the less common mental health disorders. So yes, that program's available for the parents of younger people as well.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Through the chair. Is there a evening course anywhere? This is 9 in the morning to 1?
There is, and there will be in Watertown. It's just this worked out for Connecticut Dance Theater, and she stepped up to offer her space. Apparently space is a problem outside of the school, of course, but in the community. The library doesn't really have meeting space. So yes, there will be. And also, if you go to that link at the bottom, that has the listing of all of the trainings. We have another training in Torrington. Next week, this week I have a training in Plymouth, in Woodbury. So we've had 11 trainings since April, and 8 more in the very near future. So, and several are evenings, but we will have an evening training for sure in Watertown. It's difficult to attend a morning training. I
Thank you.
understand.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you so much.
Can I ask one more question?
Would you consider, if we could get approval for it, to have it as part of a PTO meeting?
The first that I heard of this was about an hour before you just heard about it, because we spoke very briefly before the board meeting. So this is the first that we knew that there was a grant or that this was possible. So Ms. Cooper and I are going to speak outside of this meeting to look at how to do some other
I'm happy to do whatever
pieces.
works for town and whatever works for you.
Because parents are already gathered, and maybe it would actually attract more parents to show up as well.
That's something we can talk about. And also, we have to, from the board policy angle, we have to look at it to ensure that we can promote it by sending it out to the parents and so on, which I will do, and I'll speak with Ms. Cooper. And another piece, if that is the direction that we move in, I don't believe anyone looked into having any of the trainings to use any of our facilities at night, for example. This school, for example, could potentially be one if that would work from the facility standpoint. So those are things that we can talk about offline.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thank you very
Thank you.
much.
Thank you.
Are there any other members of the public that would wish to address the board tonight? Any other members? Okay, seeing none, we will move on to item I, report from the board chair. I'm going to report that there's nothing to report. Moving on to letter J, committee reports. Ms. Rinaldi, is there anything to report for curriculum and instruction?
Nothing at this time.
Mr. Vincenzi, anything for policy and labor?
No report.
Mr. Lambert, budget and finance?
No report at this time.
And back at Youth Facilities, PBC Operations Committee.
Also, no report at this time.
Mr. Makowski, Governance and Community Engagement?
No report at this time.
Okay. going on. Item K, or letter K, communications. I do have something to report. We did receive a thank you letter from Dr. Carnamola saying, Dear Board of Members, thank you so very much for the gorgeous floral arrangements you sent to my family. This has been a difficult loss for us, and I appreciate your kindness. Sincerely, Bridget.
I didn't know I'd be the only communication, but
Sorry.
thank you, thank you.
Moving on to item L, action items, adoption of items to be approved by consent. Consideration of approval of acceptance of gifts. Bear with me. The Rotary Club of Watertown donated a check in the amount of $1,000 to the robotics team. Is there a motion to accept this gift?
Yes, Madam Chair, I move that the board approve the accepting the $1,000 gift given to the robotics team by the Rotary Club of Watertown, and that a letter of appreciation for this generous donation be sent to their donor.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. Moving on to letter B, Westview Properties LLC donated a check in the amount of $1,000 to the Boy Scouts, or to the boys soccer team. Is there a motion to accept this gift?
Yes, Madam Chair. I move that the board approve the accepting of $1,000 gift given to the Watertown High School boys soccer team given by Westview Properties LLC, and that a letter of appreciation for this generous donation be sent to the donor.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. Moving on to letter M, are there any future agenda items that board members might have or comments board members have? Nothing? Okay, go to the last round of public participation. Are there any members of the public that wish to address the board? Any members that have any questions for the board? Hearing none, we will move on to letter N, or, sorry,